What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lowered Expectations. Thanks for lowering your expectations and hanging out with me here. I do appreciate it. A few videos back, I shared with you guys that I had purchased a bus and the plan was to turn it into a mobile workshop. This video is basically footage between May 5th and July 19th of me discovering problems with the bus and tackling some of those problems. I work a summer job full-time. I'm quite busy, self-employed. And so the clips are quite sporadic and chopped up. I'm probably going to stop in a few times along the way to explain some stuff in a bit more detail, and I'll see you guys at the end. Enjoy. I should be focusing on some more important stuff like getting the air system working and also getting the ramp working, figuring out what the noise is. Actually, I did figure out what the noise is in the drivetrain, or at least some of it. I'm not a big car guy or bus guy, but I'm gonna say that this is not good. Not good. Probably not good. My guess, not good. I felt like having an easy day, and so what I'm doing is tearing a bunch of wiring out. That is some sort of network connection, and we've got a GPS tracker there. And we've got a GPS tracker here with a whole bunch of wire. Anyway, back to work stripping some stuff out. I'm quite enjoying this. I'm not very good at documenting things when I get really busy. Part of that is that I'm busy and I need to get work done, but I also, I don't know, I kind of have Zen moments where I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing, and pulling out the camera to explain what I'm doing to some extent takes away from my Zen moment. I enjoy filming as well, but yeah, it's just a different thing. Anyway, all that to say that I've decided I'm going to remove at least a few of these seats. I'm probably going to leave the back two folded up for now. I'm not going to real accurately keep track of how much weight to strip out of the bus, but this seat, which is probably the lightest of the bunch, is 40 pounds. Pretty sure these bolts aren't coming out without cutting them off. So I think I'll leave that bracket there for now because potentially I can use that bracket for something. These bolts are actually on the back side of this seat and the heater is underneath it, or one of the heaters is underneath it. There is another heater up there in front of the wheel well, and there's another heater up in the front of the bus, which is also an AC unit. Basically what I was getting at is these bolts aren't going to come out any easier than the other ones, and I couldn't get the other ones out, so I am going to just remove the bolts from the bottom of the seat bracket. I keep referring to these things as heaters. What we actually have here are heater cores or heat exchangers. There is one large diesel heater beside me here in the floor, just underneath the bus. It heats up the coolant in the vehicle, and then that is circulated through a number of heater cores and also circulated through the engine to heat the engine up on cold days. There are then fans on each heater core, and you can turn on those fans to circulate the heat through the bus. I took out one of the folding seats, so I've got all the seats that are coming out as of now, and this single seat is 80 pounds. A little over 80 pounds for one folding seat. So I've got two of them left in the back. I'm not sure that these seats will ever get used, and the fact that they're 80 pounds and might never get used kind of has me wondering if it makes sense keeping them in here. Hey, RNG. Do you like the bus? Yeah. You like the bus? Florence doesn't like the bus, I don't think, eh? Florence! Meow meow! Ignore that. It's just the oil pressure. I've had the bus for just over 2 weeks now, I haven't had any time to do anything to it really, other than the stuff you guys already saw. I took the seats out of the back and a few other things. I noticed I've got a little bit of a leak on the floor, and a little bit of investigation has shown me it's actually coming from above, which is, yeah, I don't know if I told you guys, but this control panel here runs to a little circuit board underneath the dash. It's having problems, and it had some corrosion on it. Couldn't figure out where the corrosion was coming. Oh, the air is way too high. Pull the fuse, pull the fuse. Maybe I'll plug this back in and see if the air compressor shuts off. I think maybe it shuts off at 160. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. We've got a water leak, and I've been trying to figure out where it's coming from. It's raining today, and so I can see it's actually dripping down from under the dash, and it has caused corrosion on a circuit board that's under there that goes to this whole system here. And so fortunately I can get that circuit board if I need to. Oh, here it is, actually right here. This is the circuit board, and you might actually be able to see corrosion on it. Oh yeah, you sure can. This is actually a system that is plugged directly into the OBD2 and is a safety system that's tied into a whole bunch of things. An example of this is when you stop to pick somebody up, they want to make sure that you have the bus in park, you have the park brake on, you don't have it on high idle, so on and so forth, before you can actually open the doors and deploy the ramp. You don't want a bus driver driving away with the ramp deployed, the doors open, and somebody on the ramp. So this system locks out a bunch of things by connecting to the OBD2 and just making sure that can't happen. So what's happening, it's dripping through here, going down the inside of this plastic trim, and running down underneath the dash. I don't know where it's originating from, but I think we're getting a lot closer. There seems to be a pool of water up in, up in the front area, the fiberglass part. I wonder if one of these stupid antenna things is leaking. There's one there. There's a few in the bus, so I'm wondering if one of those GPS tracker things or something is leaking. I don't think it's the window along the front. I don't see any wet spots along that sign. We had a bit of an emergency situation here. I actually heard a noise at the back, and I think it was the safety blow off. This was pegged at 200 PSI. So yeah, apparently the pressure sensor for the compressor is not working, and that's why the fuse was pulled out. Where Orangey was. It is now June 15th, and from looking behind me, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that I've done a whole lot with the bus, but when I pan around or show you the floor, it's quite obvious I've done a lot. I don't know if I'd call this progress, but it's change. That wire has all been pulled out of the bus in the last 3 days. And this is the mess that I have going on behind me. So, in a previous clip I said I wasn't buying a bus as a project, I was buying something to make my life easier. Well, turns out that I just can't avoid getting into projects. The bus had a whole lot of systems that I wasn't going to use. I thought they were funny or amusing, but had an intercom system, had the little wire that you pull that would turn on the stoplight, had a sign in the side window, had the camera systems everywhere, had a payment system for the bus passes, had Wi-Fi to show the camera footage, and GPS trackers, a whole bunch of stuff. So I decided to get rid of some of that. Also I forget what it's called, but basically the high idle system had a problem. It had some corrosion, and so I decided to pull that completely out and disconnect the bus harness from the engine harness. Basically, the way they had it was the OBD2 connector was plugged into the bus harness. They were using the signals for, say, whether it was in park to let it open or close the door or deploy the ramp or put it in high idle, a bunch of stuff. So I've gotten rid of all that. I've continued tearing wires out. It looks like a huge mess, but it's getting down to the point where I'm starting to be able to make some sense of stuff. Originally, there was one diesel heater underneath the floor just ahead of where I'm standing, just behind the driver's seat. And I think that heater failed, and without removing any of the stuff, they just added another heater back by the back of the bus that ties into a heat exchanger there. I've decided to completely remove the air ride system and put in one that I got off Amazon. The original one had some leaks, and it had somebody else had made patches to the system that didn't match the manual. So in order to figure out how to repair it, I would have had to figure out what somebody previously had done to it. And I'm not familiar enough with the systems to be able to actually do that or to do it efficiently. This ka-chunk relay was added in because another one burnt out or another one wasn't functioning properly, but they didn't take the old one out. I have since stripped the old one out, and now only the working one is in the system. Yeah, they had a bunch of really silly things, like this is 12 gauge or maybe even 10 gauge wire that is going to like reverse camera signal stuff. Just absolutely ridiculous. I completely forgot. The whole reason why I decided to record video today was because I've decided I'm going to throw a bunch of this stuff out, and I wanted to film it for you guys before I actually did. Yeah, these wires, all this 10 gauge or 12 gauge wire was going to a giant plug that wasn't even used. But yeah, I'm going to get rid of these cameras. I'm going to get rid of the intercom system. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of this wire. I've saved some of it. This stuff's all longer sections. I'm going to keep the stuff for the sign just in case I decide to use that. I'm sure that people are upset about me saying that I'm getting rid of or throwing away some of the stuff in this bus, like the electronics, wiring, and seats. And what I actually mean when I say that most of the time is that I'm just not using it in the bus. Never fear, most of the things like seats, electronics, wiring, either that stuff was given away to people through Kijiji, a buyer-seller thing, or it was recycled. I have a neighbor who hauls away a bunch of my recycling stuff. So never fear, I'm not just throwing things in the landfill unless they are absolutely garbage and no one can use them. I knew that it had rust in the wheel wells here, which is going to be fairly easy to repair. I also found some rust up here, which is a hole clear through. Fortunately, it looks like that will be fairly easy to repair as well, because it's all, yeah, it's just flat plate, square section stuff. So, and then also the front of this ramp area is completely rotted out. This is going to be hard to see on camera, but the bottom is all like this. You can see this is supposed to be square tubing. I've been tinkering around in the bus. I mounted the valve body, hooked up some of the wires, got the controller dangling from a wire here, kind of figuring out the layout and stuff. I've got some connectors coming later today or tomorrow. And it started pouring rain. It's currently 5 o'clock. It's been kind of doing this on and off throughout the day. Does that squirrel have a whole cookie or something? That squirrel has a cookie. Anyway, when the weather is really nice, I think to myself that this bus is a silly idea. And then this happens, where it went from literally too hot to be in the direct sunlight to this pouring rain. And yeah, this is the perfect example of why I got this bus. I'm currently trying to figure out where to mount this pressure gauge, and I was thinking of putting it in the dash because the old one was here in the dash, I believe, but it doesn't really fit. They had this old mechanical one, which I'm kind of sad about getting rid of because I do like it. I might actually keep it and put it somewhere. I don't know. Why I'm choosing to have this, I kind of need it, is because it tells me the pressure in each bag. So front left, front right, rear left, rear right. And it also tells me the pressure in the tank. This bus originally came with height sensors that would just correct the air pressure depending on how much weight was in it. But that controller is having issues, and so I've switched out to this cheaper one. Might switch to something more fancy in the future, but right now I just want to get this going. I had a fairly short day at work today, so I came home, unloaded my truck and did all that fun stuff, and then started tinkering around with the bus a little bit. Last night I got the valve body mounted. Today I started hooking up some air lines and installed some fittings onto the valve body. Discovered that I actually still need a couple fittings, and I also need to figure out how I'm going to tee off, I guess, for the not for golf, tee into the system to get the air pressure for the gauge. I also figured out that the plan to run individual lines to each side of the bus, so front right and left, rear right and left, that's not going to work. Well, it's not going to work right away anyway, because currently I have a red line and a green line, and they go to the right rear and left rear. And then I have a yellow line, and it goes and it tees off to the fronts. So in order to actually feed the fronts individually, I would have to get under the bus and run new line all the way to each bag. I did get a new double DIN head unit for the bus. It had nothing. It had a, what do you call it? It had an intercom system. I got this Red Wolf connector kit, adapter harness kit off Amazon. Came with 4 different harnesses, I guess 2 harnesses with each male and female, and then this piece here. And fortunately, one did actually work. This is plugged in. This is what I got from Amazon. I'm not even going to try to say that name. It had pretty good reviews, and it was not terribly expensive. It was about half the price of a cheap brand named one. I could get cheaper. There's actually some Nakamichi ones and stuff that are pretty cheap, but a lot of them had pretty horrible reviews. So, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. Feels more robust than I thought. I thought it was going to feel incredibly cheap. It actually seems to have a decent heat sink on the back, which means maybe it has a half decent amplifier. This today is a perfect example of why I want this bus to work out of. And that is because it is currently the first day of summer, June 21st. It is 7 degrees Celsius outside, which is 7 degrees above freezing. And it is miserably windy and raining. I know you can't tell how windy it is there. There's some trees behind me there. You can see them blowing around like crazy. Anyway, it is absolutely miserable out. The good news is that the heater is working quite well. I've just turned off the fan. I'm sure you guys have noticed. The engine temperature, which you won't be able to see here, is up to about 90 Celsius. So yeah, it's almost up to full operation temperature. I've had the fan on heating the bus. It's quite warm in here. Mind you, it is only +7 outside. We'll see what happens on a real cold day. Much better. Much better. There were a bunch of antennas or receivers or something, transmitters on the top of the roof. This one was patched up with a piece of aluminum that looks like a smiley face. This one and this one were still in use, but I got rid of them. And I'm going to plug up the holes. I'm quite surprised to see how thick this stuff is. It's actually quite rugged. I figured it'd be half that thickness. I shit you not, people. Less than 5 minutes ago, I was like, it's almost too hot to do fiberglass work. Doing a couple little repairs on the roof here. I'm like, there's no way it's gonna rain. It's too warm. It's almost too warm to do this. And yeah, this is what's happening now. Well, I guess this is a bit of an update. I've got quite the mess going on here. It seems to be a common theme. And I don't know if I actually filmed anything saying this, but I've got the stereo head unit thing installed. I was looking for a retained accessory power wire, which means the power stays on until you open the door. And I watched a video and the guy said that you could actually get one from inside of the heater controls. So I pulled the heater control out and I started looking through the wires trying to find a retained accessory power wire. And what I ended up finding was this. That part of the connector is completely melted, and so is that wire. So yeah, I ended up going to Pick and Pull today and getting a new piece of harness. I just finished soldering it in, and this was also badly damaged. That's where the plug plugged in. I didn't want to take a chance on putting a new piece of harness in and then having this happen again. So I decided to replace this. It was $62 from Amazon to get a new one of these. So I thought that was a pretty good deal, all things considered. I made a mistake and put it back together without showing you guys what wire it was, but it's the wire for the light in this. I think it's a brown with a white stripe. Anyway, I connected this pink wire to it. You can actually see it in there, sort of. Anyway, I connected the pink wire. The pink wire now goes to the accessory wire from the stereo. I've already tested it to make sure it works. Now I'm going to solder it together and put some heat shrink on. And I can put the stereo back in, and that part will be done. Orangey. Orangey. Hi, buddy. I've got the stereo installed and it is now hooked up to, what do you call it? Retained accessory power. So when I open the door, the stereo now turns off, but it will stay on until I open the door if I've had the engine running. Today and the last couple of days, actually, I've been working on sealing some leaks. I think I showed you guys the water was actually coming in and running down here. I thought the windshield had been leaking, but it turns out, yeah, it was actually coming in through a hole here and then going through. So what I ended up doing first is put a bunch of silicone. This is silicone in here. And then this is actually epoxy with micro balloons in it. So it's a thickened epoxy to add some strength to this. I trimmed up some of the fiberglass all the way around the front just to make it, how do I say, to reduce some stresses. It wasn't sitting properly all the way across the front, all the way through there, yeah. Did I show you guys I patched the roof? I don't think I did. I put a patch there, and a patch up there. And then I did that. At the same time, I did this. So this was cracked on the outside. And so I put some fiberglass and epoxy here, more thickened epoxy here to strengthen up this area. And just after I was finished, we had a big downpour. And it was the first time that I didn't have a huge amount of water dripping in along this front. So it appears what I've done has actually worked. Turns out the windshield's not actually leaking. It was leaking in here, going along the, I don't know, body frame, whatever, and leaking through there. So it seems to have actually worked. However, I noticed I actually had a little bit of water coming in through this harness after the rain. Not harness, rather, it's a split wiring loom. And inside of this split wiring loom was a fairly heavy gauge wire, and its job is to deliver power to the AC unit, I believe just to the fan motor. And so originally this wire came in, this is what it did now. It came in. It went down along the bottom of this window. It went up all the way along here, went across the top like this. It went back that way about a foot, and then it came this way, looped around, and then there was this lug here. And then on this lug, there was another connector that went all the way back around to the front, and down around, and then into the fan. So what I've done, I've cut out about 9 feet of this wire, pretty heavy gauge wire. I cut 9 feet of that out and about 5 feet of this smaller gauge wire that went directly to the AC, I believe, fan, and or the heater fan. Anyway, I've removed a whole bunch of unnecessary wire, and yeah, ended up soldering it together and making a joint here. Didn't have a butt connector big enough, and I ended up using a plumbing fitting, basically a compression fitting, and it worked quite well. Looks quite nice. I didn't do a very good job of documenting it, but the bus was actually leaking in several places along the front. I showed you guys where I used the thickened epoxy on the right-hand side. The water was coming in there, running across one of the frame or body members, and then dripping in through the center. It was also leaking where I repaired it on the left-hand side with the thickened epoxy and fiberglass patch. And it was leaking in another spot, and as you guys will see in an upcoming clip, it was leaking in yet another space. Yesterday, it rained all day, and it rained quite hard. And actually, now that it's light out, I can see the freaking hole. Who installed that? Anyway, let's see if you guys can pick it out here. There's light coming through somewhere where it shouldn't be. Let's zoom in a little. that should not be there. It used to be behind some foil wrap stuff or some foil insulation, which I had to pull out to find the leak. I don't know who installed this and how they thought it was okay. You can quite clearly see a hole there, right there. Oh, the window's open. Whoa, that's a lot of lightning. Well, this will be a good test to see if my leak patching worked. All right, folks, it's the next morning, and let's check and see if this is actually dry. This looks wet over here, but that's just shiny epoxy. There's no puddles in along this crevice, so that's a good thing. Hi, Florence. Hey, buddy. Hi, squirrel. Okay, I don't see any wet spots up in here. The other place it was leaking from was around this light there, and there was a big puddle of water. Absolutely perfectly dry in here. I actually see some dusty stuff there. Not even a little bit damp. That's great news. Underneath there, no water. Come around to this side. And let's see. Completely dry there as well. I had some problems in the past with it leaking here and running through this area. Yeah, so it looks like, at least for now, I solved my leaking problems. I'm going to continue showing you guys upgrades and repairs that I'm doing to the bus. That last clip that you saw was July 19th, and it is currently November 23rd. So I've done a whole lot of stuff to the bus since then. I'm happy to announce that it has been all of those months, and I haven't had any leaks. We've had quite a bit of rain, we've had cold weather. You might actually hear a diesel heater running in the background, keeping me warm. And yeah, pleased that I haven't had any more leaks since sealing up around that light. That was apparently the last of the leaks. Let me know if you want these videos to be longer format, like half an hour plus, or if you prefer them to be a little bit shorter. YouTube seems to favor shorter videos these days, and a lot more content creators are putting together smaller videos and releasing more of them. But I fear if I do that too much with this, it's going to actually harm me, because a bunch of people are probably going to watch this video, but then because it's basically the same topic, less people will watch the next one, and less people will watch the next one, so on and so forth. So that's what I've found in the past anyway. That is just about it for this one. I am very tempted to swing the camera around and show you guys some of the progress of the bus, but I think that's gonna wait until at least the next video, maybe a couple videos down the road. I've made a lot of progress with the bus. I'm pretty pleased with the way it's been going. Turns out that one of the most difficult things is actually getting insurance on this bus. I had a nightmare experience with Zensurance. I would absolutely recommend not using them and finding another option. But yeah, again, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.